All right, starting a new unit today, lesson or unit 7. And starting with lesson 1, we're talking about parameters and return. So this is our explore lesson. We have 4 parts: explore, investigate, practice, and then make. And that will take us through the first part of the unit. So we're starting out with an activity. Now, if you choose to do this in with physical manipulatives, that is totally fine, but I have provided for you some slides called digital manipulatives, and there are some slides on there that you need to turn in. So you can follow along with this video and mess around with the slides if you want to, but I will tell you when it's time to work on the specific slides that you need. So we're going to be working with, we're going to pretend that this is an envelope right here. Okay, so if you are working alongside, you could go ahead and make an envelope. And on that envelope is a function called make cake. And within the function, we are going to set certain parameters. So in this case, our parameters include tiers and flavor. So you can guess that we would be able to tell the program how many tiers we want, layers, for those of you who don't know cake terms, and also what flavor we want. And then it will run the function, whatever code is in that function, based on the specific number of tiers and the specific flavor that we have given it. So let's run through with an example. We are going to set the parameters as 3 tiers, and the flavor would be lemon. So we just go ahead and replace those two in our function. And so now we're going to pretend that now we're going to open up this envelope, and inside the envelope is of the function make cake is the instructions for baking a cake. And here are those instructions. Again, we're repeating the function make cake with the following parameters: tiers and flavor. And then if we go into the instructions for making that cake, we're going to repeat how many times, however many times we have tiers. So in code, this allows you to input a certain number into the variable called tiers, change it as many times as you want to, and then every time that function make cake would run, you would be making a different cake of a different amount of tiers and a different flavor. So however many tiers we have, in this case it's 3, we're going to repeat 3 times. We're going to bake a what flavor cake? Lemon. And then we're going to ice the cake. And we're going to do that 3 times before moving outside of the loop. And then we're going to assemble it 3 times, or assemble the 3 layers into one cake and then put it into a box. So that is the entire function. And let's watch it run. There's our 3 layers. We have now assembled the layers, and then we put it into a box. I apologize. My picture was in front of that a little bit. Okay, so that's essentially how it works. Now, these are parameters. Parameters are a variable inside of a function that are placeholders for the values that are going to be passed through the function. You can use parameters for all sorts of things like sizes or colors or um, you know, a thickness of a line that you're going to draw or something like that. It's really great for all of those reasons. And this is called the argument, the part that we actually pass through the parameter. So whatever we're putting on the sticky note and assigning to those variables that are inside the parameters, those are the argument. Try to remember that. All right, so what if I wanted to bake a 4-layer chocolate cake? What would that look like? We're going to put a 4 and the word chocolate, and then we're going to replace our variables of tiers and flavor with those new values or arguments. And then, of course, we run it through the same program. It's going to make 4 layers of a chocolate cake. And it should have put it in a box too. It didn't. All right, let's look at another function. This one calculates the cost of making a cake. So in this case, we have a function called cost cake based on number of tiers and flavor. So you can imagine that a bakery could determine how much to charge for the cake based on how many tiers and what flavor the customer wanted. So in this example, we're going to give it 3 layers and lemon flavor, and those will be our parameters, arguments that we are running through the parameters. Sometimes I don't know how many clicks I have to do to get to the next screen. All right, so cake cost. Cake cost is our envelope. That is our function. Our function contains other code, so that's why it's an envelope. And we're going to open it up and pull out the instruction sheet and see how to figure out cake cost. And here is our code. I'm going to have to move over here. Cake cost is our function based on the number of tiers and the flavor of our cake. Now, we're going to set a new variable, 2 new variables in this case, flavor cost and total. So first of all, we have a flavor cost based on what flavor. So each flavor is worth a different amount of money. If you jot down here, we have it if the flavor is chocolate, then flavor cost gets 5. If flavor equals lemon, flavor cost gets 4. If flavor equals vanilla, flavor cost gets 3. So first we're going to determine a cost based on the flavor. And then our total gets the flavor cost, whatever's up here, multiplied by the number of tiers. So our function is going to run based on whatever were those original arguments that pass through the parameters. All right, so let's get our examples in here. 3 and lemon. If flavor equals lemon, then we're going to have a flavor cost of 4. And then what would the total equal? We'll say 4 multiplied by number of tiers, which is 3. So our total is 12. Now, what is a return total? What is that in our code? We've not seen that before. That means that we are going to return the total, the new value of the variable total, which we determined in the last slide was 12, to kind of replace the whole value of the envelope. Cake cost 3 lemon. Now you'll see 12. So it stops the flow of the function and it returns the value of that variable to wherever it was called in that function. So here's our envelope, cost cake 3 lemon. It's returned the value of 12. So now we can put cost cake 3 lemon, was it 3? Into our baggie of cake calculator. Remember, cake calculator is the variable that we are calling in the first place. And now cake calculator is 12. So we replace the whole function. So here's how it looks in JavaScript. This might make it make more sense. If we have cake calculator right here, a variable called cake calculator gets this function. So the function is now replacing the value of a variable. And in that case, because we had a line that said return total, and the total was 12, now this all is 12. So that means that we're putting the value of 12 into the cake calculator baggie. We can also print to console log cake cost, the string cake cost, and then concatenate with a function. This is a function, cost cake with parameters, 3 and lemon. And then in the console, it would say cake cost colon 12. Now we're going to move to the activity guide. Or not, it's a digital activity guide. It's a slide for you. So let me present that. Get down here. So the slides have, I think, 3 slides that you're going to be doing something on, and I'll show you where that is. Challenge 1 for you, now that you hopefully understand the concept of parameters and arguments and returns, all the things that we learned about today, you are going to now create your own function with parameters. So here's the challenge. You're going to build a house, and the house has to draw upon 2 parameters. So whatever you want to do with those parameters, it could be different sizes, different types of houses, different colors of houses. Think of the things that we use for tiers and flavors from the make cake example. Just make sure you have 2 parameters at least. You can add more if you want to give yourself an extra challenge. And then you're going to write a function that calls those parameters. So we're going to hopefully just use pseudocode where it's not exactly specifically formatted like code, but you're going to instead just kind of write out what you mean. So repeat this 2 times instead of worrying about all the syntax that we would have to write in a for loop. Um, then you're going to go ahead and write all of your details. What's your function name, what's your parameter names, your variable names, and then work through the function and draw the house, given a couple of example parameters on another slide. So let's move on, and this is what your screen will look like. So you've got challenge 1, here's your envelope. The envelope is the function that draws 2 parameters. So you will need to click and drag this one over here so that you have 2 parameters right there. Inside this box is going to be your function. You can use the comments up here to describe what your function does. And then inside the function, you're going to write all the instructions. How would your function bring in those 2 parameters that you gave it and then actually draw the house plan? And then you have this slide right here where you're going to actually move the walls and put them where they go based on your function and your design. I would take about 10 minutes to do that. You can come back to the previous parts of the video if you need to look back at exactly what we're talking about with slide or with parameters and returns and arguments and all of that stuff. And just make sure that you clearly understand what is going on. And then you can resume the video and I'll go through my example with you. All right, so here's my example. I created a function called draw house, and then I repeated that function over here. And in my draw house function, I have 2 parameters, length and width. So I kept it really simple. I just want to make sure that I understand how it works, and that's the most important part. So this function draws a house based on a given length and width. Um, Inside my function, I'm repeating the following twice. I'm going to draw a line of a certain length. I'm going to turn right, draw a line of a certain width, turn right, and then do that one more time. So if given sample parameters of 7 and 12, oh, okay. I just forgot what I was doing. Don't worry about that. So if I gave myself a length of 7 and a width of 12, I should have a box like this. So I just started in the bottom corner, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I went over 12. So draw a line of a length 7, turn right, draw a line of length 12, turn right, and then repeat the process. 7, turn right, 12, turn right. Your next challenge is going to create a cost calculator function that is using the same parameters as what you used in the last challenge. So I'm going to reuse length and width and create a function to figure out the cost of building this house. And again, we're writing it in pseudocode. This one may or may not be a little bit easier than the last one. And okay. So here's what your workspace looks like again, looks exactly the same. Just make sure that you're writing a function to calculate the cost. You're using those same two parameters again. You can add some comments to let us all know what the function is supposed to do, and then write down in pseudocode what you're intending to happen once this function is called. How is it going to take those parameters and calculate and then return, don't forget that, return the total cost, whatever you call that number. Go ahead and pause, back up if you need to, and resume the video whenever you are finished. All right, here is the one that I made. I made a function called cost calculate with two parameters, length and width. It determines the cost of the house based on a given length and width. I did decide to do the same thing as the example, and I created two new variables because it was easier for me to calculate things within my function. So I wanted to see the length times 100 is now we're going to call it total length. That's how much it cost, $100 per foot. Okay. And then same thing with the width. I take how many feet is the width times $200, and that gives me total width. So those are my two variables. I had to create them so they have the word var in front of them. Then I come down here and I have, oh, I should have done that one too. I should have a variable also up here that says cost. So cost gets the total length, so whatever's the result here, plus the total width, whatever's the result here. And then it's going to return cost, which means that whatever the value of cost is now, it now replaces this function in value. So here's my example. I gave it a length of 32 and a width of 24. So once I put the length in of 32 times 100, I get 3,200. I put the width in of 24 times 200, and I get 4,800. Now I need to add both of those together, and I get 8,000. And then I return cost. So 8,000 is the new value over there. So some key takeaways today, just know that functions that include parameters and return values help us simplify our code. If you were to draw a series of squares that got bigger each time, instead of having to create a separate function for each one of those things, if we include parameters in our function, now we can just plug in one little number and it will change the size of it every single time that function is run. Functions can only return one value at a time, so keep that in mind. But a function can have either no parameters and no return values. So all the functions that we've worked with in the past, they can have parameters but no return values. So you do not have to return that total cost. If you don't want to, do it there. They can have return values, but no parameters. So in normal functions that we have normally been working with, we can use the return function or the return command, but and even without the parameters. And we can have both parameters and return values. So cleared it up for you, didn't it? Some extra vocab review here. A parameter is a variable in a function definition. And so it's used as a placeholder for a value that's going to be passed through the function. And that's called an argument. And the return is used to return the flow of control to the point where the procedure, which is what we call the function, was called. So wherever you called that function, now we go back to that point and we return the value there. All right. Don't forget your closing questions.